Here live. Good afternoon and welcome to the Senate Government Operations Committee meeting of Thursday, January 8th, 2026. I have a few witnesses to speak with today, and up first is Tim Wieters-Dumont, who's the Executive Director of the Vermont Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. And then our state treasurer will be joining us a little bit later in the afternoon. And we're still kind of on that, well, I guess it's been overly used, but what'd you do all summer? Had your nice summer? Hi, how are you? Good to see you, sort of thing. I like to call it priorities for the year. So that's where we are. And I know we did some work last year to help you with your job. And hopefully, I know it wasn't enough. It never seems to be enough, but hopefully it began a process, and I'm feeling there might be more of that. So,
yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Why don't we just
that would be great.
Go around the room, because well, you know the other four pretty well, but we have a brand new senator from the Orleans district.
Yeah, just Senator John Lowey from Orleans. I believe the last time I was down here was Jane Woodard.
Yes,
Is that right?
that's correct. Yeah.
That is a long time ago.
I know.
John.
I mean, my age. Yeah.
Because John Campbell's was
Then here to.
a long
There was
time.
Graham Kranefeld for a year, and they were on Baldwin Street. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Wild.
Yes. But John took over in 16.
Well, Tim, welcome in, and with you is Kim McManus, and welcome to you as well, Kim. So you have 5 intent listeners waiting to hear what you have to tell us.
Thank you so much for having us in. Welcome back, Tim Wieters-Dumont, Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs, and Kim McManus, our legislative and policy attorney and catch-all, just wonderful addition to the department. That last year she didn't spend a whole lot of time in here. She was busy in House and Senate Judiciary, but I think you'll see more of her when they don't have her occupied. She just came down. I've always said they need a fire pole between those two committees, House and Senate Judiciary. But it's great to be back. And what I'll do is just go over some contextual pieces. But I wanted to, and then Kim's going to go over some legislative priorities. But I wanted to first thank you for the support that this committee provided during the appropriations process last year. One of the major things we're able to do was avoid layoffs.
Yeah.
Vacancy savings are usually something that is more of a target. It's not true savings. It's not true vacancies. And so you were able to help us with the advocacy of restoring vacancy savings, so we didn't need to lay anybody off. And then a really important piece, we had already budgeted 9 positions, which were limited service, but they were people in the jobs doing the work. And we were able to convert those from limited service to permanent, which was enormously helpful to the department. Again, avoiding people leaving our department at a time when caseloads and crime is generally on the rise in the state. So
And
I
I
wanted
would
to
just
thank
add, if I may.
Thank you so
we
much.
don't keep good people when they know they're limited service. We keep good people when it's a job that has a future.
Correct. And I just wanted to thank you because it's also an economic generator. The state of Vermont is an economic generator. And when our department is in 14 counties, Orleans to down to Rutland and therefore with 175 employees, it's really important to know that they live and work in their communities and they pay taxes. Their kids go to the schools, and they are doing difficult jobs in the courts. And our jobs are 98% in person in the courthouses. So we are working in person, and we are on call 24/7, 365 days a year, working with law enforcement nights and weekends. And we are the first call of all law enforcement. We had a really fascinating few years that we've experienced in the department. The 24% increase in homicide files over the last 3 years. We've done a great job of actually 2022, 2021. We've actually almost cleared most of those cases
Oh.
from 2022 and 2021. So, but we're still dealing with 23, 24, about 10 left in 2022 and 2025. And there's been 34 homicide filings this year, which is a lot.
8 days?
And no, last year, the end of last year. Thank you, Senator. No, not this year.
That day.
Thank you. I'm still stuck in December. Thank you so much.
No.
So, and I'm sort of steeped in data right now because we're in the process of doing our annual snapshot report, which is December 10th is the date we chose every year for the last 3 years. So we will send that to you. It is almost ready. And it will be available for your use whenever and however you'd like. So that'll be ready soon.
Will that snapshot include breakdowns of types of homicides? I know historically, more than 50% of homicides in Vermont are domestic violence homicides. Will that all be broken down in that report?
I might look to do a drill down. Part of what we found, actually, Kim went through all the filings from last year by affidavit, which is a manual task. Because sometimes something is charged like on the face of a charge, you can't always see whether it's domestic or if the domestic violence incident results in a homicide, it might just be charged as a murder case. Sometimes they get amended down to aggravated assault, et cetera. So we could drill down a little bit, and it might be the addendum that we eventually could send over. But I think it's a smart thing for us to look at. Kim actually did look, and there's been an increase in what we call drug nexus firearm piece. It's sort of the domestic violence matters that have plateaued, not in a good or bad way. They're just sort of constant. The increase that we've seen has mostly been drug adjacent, drug nexus, and firearm related, which Kim will dive into on our legislative priorities because there's some existing bills on the wall ready to go. Some of them authored by Rutland County folks about theft of firearm, things like that, which are nonpartisan great ways to go.
They didn't have some of those firearms in the first place. It wouldn't have to be stolen.
With my follow-up, so
But we can circle back on that.
that would be
Sure.
great. And when you are sort of looking at the increase in violent crime, you're going to break that down by homicide, assault, because I'm looking at DOJ data that actually shows that violent crime has gone down. So I'm imagining there's peaks in some areas and dips in other areas. And so I don't want to broad brush paint.
Yeah, and these are filings. So these are ones that the courts so there's a difference between reported like NIMBR's FBI data, and then these are filings that have occurred. And it includes, and actually I say this always in judiciary, but I don't always say it in other rooms, but it includes attempt and conspiracy. And often there was some violent cases recently where the persons who are charged across the full spectrum. So this person who fires the gun, sometimes the person who drives away, disposal of the body, that sort of thing. It's all under the umbrella, and they're often charged together in that conspiracy, aiding and abetting, accessory. But we count those in the homicide category because they're all related to a person's death. But we could break down, we could give you some more granular data on the filings. On the reported piece, what's interesting is, like, for example, in Castleton, we have an unsolved murder in Castleton that won't be reflected in homicide filings, but it was a reported homicide. So it's that mismatch of reported, and there's historical reports. We settled a 1986 homicide from Bennington County this year, very recently. And, but it counted as a 2025 filing. Last year. So that just shows the date of the incident doesn't always match up to the date of file. And so what I use is filing data. So there is a little bit of that mismatch of reported incidents and filing data, and investigations sometimes take quite a while. And you will have the data, in part of the reason, selfish reason we do it is to have an understanding of our work, our workflow, caseload. And we also try to look at victim advocate and administrative staff caseloads. Sort of jumping to that directly, we have seen progress in the backlog over the last 3 years. We've driven it down by about 15%, which is fantastic. A little bit slower last year. Increase in trials has been a huge help. And then the caseloads have been around 300. 3 years ago, it was about 375, 350. So we've driven down some of the caseloads for the attorneys.
On average around all
Yep,
counties.
and we'll break it down by county once we send it out, because it is an average, tells partly part of the story. Victim advocates, about 600 cases per victim advocate. That's just because we have less victim advocates than we have attorneys. Administrative professionals, about 800 cases that they're putting their hands on. So those are some areas, right, where we're seeing a lot of pressure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Senator Clark.
So is that going to be, I hope, one of your asks, because I know our victim advocates are overwhelmed.
And it's a twofold ask. And I know Senator Chair and I have talked about efficiency and system changes in addition to physician requests. We need to move more cases through the system, and we need the courts to give us more time to move more cases. And that means not just new positions, but it means the ability to move more cases more quickly, which is positions plus. Because if you just do positions and you don't think about things like operating costs, computers, laptops, office space, you're only ballooning one side. But if you don't have the space to move those cases, so yes, we do need more positions. And we have the requests that you included in your letter last year for
Right.
admins and VAs. And those are still a part of
So
our.
600 cases for anybody is overwhelming.
Oh, and
And these are brutal cases.
yes,
And so what is the best average number? What's the ideal average number for a victim advocate?
so there actually is some studies on this. It's hard because Vermont has a unified court system, so our misdemeanors and our felonies are all matched in together, and one docket could have felonies and misdemeanors in it. But there's a number that's closer to 150 to 200, I believe, is kind of what a normal type of.
Well, they're like
case.
caseworker. I mean, they're like.
Correct. And you work with multiple victims in a single case if multiple family members are affected, that sort of thing. So it could include many people, right? Those are just cases. So yeah, and what I will say up front is that our appropriations ask, we're still in the midst of working through that. We're still seeing what we're getting from the governor's office in terms of what their recommend will be. We're going through BAA next week in part. So we're still triangulating
What you're asking the VA.
Exactly. Our asking the BAA is fairly particularized to Senator Hosky's district in that the accountability docket, which has been a huge success. We
Yeah.
moved from 878 cases on October 20th. We've moved 412 cases. We moved a deputy state's attorney for a brief time up to Chittenden with a joint intersection with the governor's office and sort of special prosecutor and deputy state
Right.
attorney, and moved 50% of the cases that we started with, which is huge in 2 months.
That's great.
That is great.
And really drove down with Agency of Human Services were a key component.
yeah.
Being right in the room, Defender General's office, judiciary, everyone has worked together. It's been a wonderful thing to watch. And Sarah George's office has supported the effort, getting to your BAA request, through existing victim advocate administrative staff, staffing up Special Prosecutor Zach Waite, who's from Washington County. And so some of our ask is for essentially overtime and administrative costs for those victim advocates and admins that stepped up. We also have some asks for the transport program, has bumped up some of our overtime for the transport program. And that's a huge issue that I'll get into more in the budget. But if a judge asks you to be at court at 8:30 and like Monday that court was closed, state was closed a couple Mondays ago. Well, we had 17 transport deputies on the roads by the time the courts were closed. And they had to get up, some of them at 4 a.m. to get up to Newport and Springfield. So that's just one of those pieces, right, where you don't think about how do people get to court, but it's important. We have multiple vacancies in our transport program because we're competing with other law enforcement agencies. And our overtime budget is kind of cannibalizing the rest of our budget right now for transport. So we do have a BAA request for overtime and for per diem, which is a separate piece for the transport program. And that's not just about accountability docket. That's a statewide ask, but accountability docket, we were saying yes every time we could get someone to court to resolve cases. That's what we're doing. And we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about accountability and corrections and institutions, but it's been you should never say mission accomplished because it's a terrible thing to say out loud when you're in the process. It's mission like in
We learned
progress.
that with President Bush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
But
of us learned that.
it's been a wonderful thing to see when you just have more time with cases because you can act like really view it in a more contemplative way. And the dispositions, like the sentences, we have charts on that, which we can send you. It isn't just sentence, it's probation, parole, treatment court. Some of them we dismissed because they've engaged with treatment to the point where we're satisfied, but it's an interesting chart. And we can get you that as recent as last week, where we're at with 400 cases is not 400 convictions. It's we dismiss when we get convictions in almost every case. And we have not had a single trial. We've had trial
Of the
dates.
400 cases you've taken
Not
out.
had a single
Amazing.
trial.
That is.
And we took advantage of a retired judge, I think, to bring him back.
Judge Maley, yes. And he's been wonderful part
Yeah.
of the program. Yeah, really
Senator
wonderful.
Bielski.
I appreciate that, but my question was going to be if you had breakdowns on the dispositions of those cases in
Yeah.
accountability court. It sounds like they do, and I'd love to see them.
Yeah, actually, I will send it from the corrections website yesterday. I'll send it over to your committee assistant for testimony today. I think it's recent as of last week. So,
Wow.
Great.
but I want to say every Tuesday, governor's office, Sarah George, Zach Wade, and myself meet about how it's going, where we need to work on things. So it's been a collaborative effort. Every Monday, the court meets with the sheriff about transport needs for the week. It's kind of how court should be everywhere, but we just did it in one place for a few months. Sarah George is working on a transition plan with the existing court staff, and not a concern. What our hope is that the human services umbrella stays engaged in Chittenden, and that judges up there continue to schedule things flexibly, because the 30, 60, 90-day status conferences, they just don't work for people with 5 or more cases.
Yeah.
And people with 3 or more cases make up about 45% of all cases in the state. People with 5 or more make up 1/4 of all the cases in the state. So if you think about those two
An
categories.
individual with 5 cases.
Yes, that's correct.
Frequent flyer.
But those 5 cases could have all happened on the same day.
Same day, yes, exactly. Same day, same. A lot of time though, if something happened on the same day, it would often be a single information in a single case. Those would be individual counts. So when I say 400 cases or dockets, it does not represent the number of counts someone may have been charged with. Just a single case might have 3 counts. Violation of innocent release, I'm going to use as a hypothetical, a simple assault from Senator White.
Yep.
Exactly. Something like attempted simple assault.
Attempted, but then I crossed the border,
Exactly.
maybe with a hostage or something, that's a different,
Yes.
yeah.
So, but all this to say, we've been working hard, since we left here. We've been moving more cases, and 6% clearance rate over the last year. I hope we can get up to 150 or 200% to really make progress. We still have 22,000 pending cases. We had 26,000 pending cases a few years ago. So we've moved cases. It's just so.
Senator Clark?
And then I'll hand it off on priorities. Yeah.
Next to Chittenden County, which had such a backlog, sort of a paralyzing backlog.
Yeah.
What counties are sort of next in terms of need?
I'm looking at your quilt.
Yeah, look at made by a Windsor district.
Oh, of course. So in my view of some of the data which we'll produce for you, in terms of the hot spots in the state, places that we're seeing increases are Washington County, Franklin County, Windham County has a lot going on. And it's there's many pending violent cases in Windham, and many in the categories we were just talking about. And then the Northeast Kingdom as a group of counties, about 16 pending homicides, plus a lot of folks. They have both sides of the pressure system up there, as I'm sure you know well, Senator. And not a huge amount of service access in the same way that other parts of the state have, unless you're in one of the smaller, few downtowns there, and even there, it's not as accessible as other parts of the state. But so the kingdom, as of the 91 corridor of Orleans and Caledonia, has a lot of pressures right now. Franklin, Windham, Washington, and I will say Rutland as well, because there's a volume piece, but they're also staying kind of on top of it. So it's interesting. They have a need for accountability, docket, space, and time, because they have a lot of violence, 16 pending homicides in Rutland. So there's a lot of pressure on the space and time. If you're someone picking up 4 or 5 cases at the Walmart or somewhere other downtown establishment, and you need treatment, you need a conversation with the judge, and there's a pending homicide coming in, you're not going to get your time in court. And so opening up space, and I know the state's attorney down there and law enforcement is very engaged with trying to get it down there as well. But it's different. And I want to say that Chittenden County's experience will be not duplicative of every county. There's replication isn't duplication with this program. I think it's got to see what the local assets are. But Rutland is a place I think would be a great second location, in part because of what we know about the defense bar, the judge, the state's attorney, law enforcement, and a local facility for transportation to and from Marble Valley very quickly. We're not talking about 2 or 3 hours in the car for the male detainees. And we're talking about an hour plus for the women's facility. But that's doable, as opposed to, Washington doesn't have a facility. So it is a longer exchange here. And we're down to 1 transport deputy in Washington County. We're trying to fit that. So But anyway, it's been a busy year. We've done a lot of, I think, really excellent work that we're proud of. And we have a unified state's attorneys and sheriffs legislative priorities list for this year for, in my opinion, the first time it's been a truly unified agenda. So I'll hand it off to you, Kim McMahon, and it's all Kim's work.
Oh, well, yeah, I came along and suddenly we.
That's correct.
Well, just a transition note, to mention with the accountability docket, you may hear it referred to in different phrases because there's sort of a rebrand of the name. We in no way want to offend all the other, courts that are running and operating. Everyone's looking for accountability, and it's not like accountability wasn't happening in other places. So just a note, because you'll hear it slowly being referred to, I think, differently in the future as far as the name. It's for the persons with multiple dockets, who we are realizing, we're just not reaching them in our traditional timeline. And so we need to change how we are setting up court for those individuals. So just a little transition note there. So yes, we submitted to your committee so that you can review at your leisure. We have 10 legislative priorities this year
Do we have those copies?
They are in your inbox.
Yeah, but I don't, use my computer is all.
Here,
Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna
I have an extra copy for you, Madam Secretary.
That's okay. I'm.
And I think
Love
there's
to
a
have
copy being delivered to you right now.
Oh,
Slightly on chicken scratch on the front.
but don't you need
I
that?
don't, I memorized.
Done. Thank you. Much appreciated.
No worries.
And we're not going to go through all 10 today. We're going to highlight a few that we think you would be interested in particular in this room. We're happy to talk about all of them, but we also want to be very cognizant of your time.
I imagine I will get to hear about the others.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Later in the week.
Yes, that is
Yes.
right. Exactly. Next Friday. So as Tim stated, this is coming from both sides of our house. State's attorneys and sheriffs support these 10 objectives. A number of them are left over from last year that we did not have time in our various rooms to get to, that we have been told will be priorities this year for House Judiciary or Senate Judiciary, particularly House Judiciary on the first one, which is firearms. There are 2 bills that are on the wall right now. H200, which is relating to persons prohibited from possessing firearms. We have a statute, which many of you are probably familiar with, that if you have been convicted of certain offenses, you are prohibited from possessing a firearm, or if you have certain cases pending, you're prohibited from a firearm. The corollary federal statute also includes individuals who have been found by the court to be a person in need of treatment, or who have been subject to a hospitalization order, or a non-hospitalization order. And so we would like the state statute to also prohibit firearms from persons who, again, from the court have been found in need of a hospitalization or non-hospitalization order. That is our first firearm bill. The second one is increasing the penalty for theft of a firearm. Currently, the theft of a firearm would be connected to the value of the firearm. So if the firearm is valued under 900, is it 900 or 500? I always mess it up. I believe it's 900. It would be considered a misdemeanor. And this bill, just the theft of a firearm, regardless of the value of the firearm, would increase the penalty to a felony offense. I have not read the entire bill yet, but the House just released 606, which is they're stating it as an omnibus firearms bill. So I believe there's some other firearm legislation in there, and I just haven't had a chance to read it yet. You all have been quite busy introducing bills this week. So our department supports both of those bills, and we'll be interested to see what other firearm legislation may come up this year. Another priority connected in some ways to firearms is we have been looking for our state to have an organized crime act. You'll hear it referred to as RICO. racketeering act that we have federally. A number of states have their own state racketeering bill, and this would allow us or give us another tool to go after those who are organizing the criminal behavior that we're seeing in the state. So an easy example would be retail theft. We have reports of individuals who are organizing other individuals to go in and steal certain items from stores. They then sell those items back to the organizer at 30 cents on the dollar, say, and then that organizer goes and resells those objects.
Ooh, maybe like a modern day Pagan who organized all these little opinions all over the West.
Oh, yeah, so I was like,
Oh,
wait,
that
yeah.
Pagan was the original racketeer.
Yes, so that's one example, and then you can imagine, of course, this would apply to not only theft, but drug sales, firearm sales, any type of organized crime. The list is quite long of what one could be organizing, but this allows us to not just be trying to get the individuals on the ground who are doing small retail theft, and who, in our opinion, are being taken advantage of by these organizers, but we can go after the organizers and be able to coordinate with our sister states as well. And hopefully the aim would be to hold those individuals accountable and make Vermont a less friendly state for this activity.
Senator Flex?
Have we seen an increase in this kind of organized crime?
We are seeing an increase in it. We had a very interesting presentation by Deputy Sheriff from Chittenden County, who happens to share my name, but no relation, Deputy Paul McManus. And he would be wonderful if you are interested to hear more on this. But just looking at Chittenden County, he has been mapping this activity, and it was illuminating what he's been able to track. And they've been able to have the time, and Sheriff Gamlin's been able to give him the time to do this, to track it across Chittenden County. We know it's happening elsewhere, but we haven't necessarily had the coordination to be able to track it as well. But he would give a great presentation if you're interested.
Senator White?
Thank you, Chair Collier. I'm wondering, did that relate in part to border parts of the state? Is that, we hear a lot in White River Junction that because it's not that the crime is necessarily happening here, but like the junction and trade-off is where they're ultimately being caught, if that's the best way to put that. Or that's where they know the crime occurred.
And I believe there is a connection, and I wouldn't want to go too deeply right now, but we do see along our I-91 corridor and Route 7, just that where the traffic flows, and where things are being handed off and organized.
And are you finding that it's connected more? Like I know for a long, and this is judiciary, so I apologize. This is like not necessarily our wheelhouse, but for a long time it seemed like fentanyl was a mistake, and now it seems like fentanyl is a purposefully purchased substance in a way that it had previously been. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but like folks had purchased an item and a drug, and then fentanyl had been added to it, maybe unwittingly, and then now it seems like fentanyl is actually a drug being purchased.
Yeah, I mean,
That-
okay.
Go ahead, Senator Gamble.
From the judiciary lens, fentanyl is really the only drug available on the market. It's not that someone's making a choice to go out and seek fentanyl. That is now what the market is flooded with. And now that fentanyl
It's
is
everything.
being cut with other things that are more harmful, like xylazine and certain benzodiazepines, which is part of why we should
One
criminalize
thing
things,
that's
because that's what happens.
fascinating that Senator Bajowski and I both went through 3 or 4 years ago was there was a shift. People used to be seeking uppers or downers, and now fentanyl is in uppers and it's in
It's
what
in
we would
everything.
call cocaine. But it's really fentanyl is just ubiquitous with every drug that you can buy on the illegal drug marketplace. And so, but previously what was fascinating, having prosecuted right down the road in 2021 and 2022, was people were seeking heroin,
Yeah.
knowing that fentanyl was in it. And some folks who were newer to that market were surprised by it then. There are people who are engaged in that market now are not surprised. As you were sort of alluding to, it is what you are buying now.
There is no.
But they're not
there's no heroin. It's fentanyl. Fentanyl is the
Right.
drug that you are buying.
And we see it on our roadways as well. And we do have a major, piece of, our DUI world is no longer alcohol. There was 3 deaths related to pure alcohol last year. The rest, and we had over 50, was either combined or just a drug impact to the system. So that is a pretty major shift.
I think it's huge.
A lot of it is what I would call upper. So people that have cocaine, but there's a fentanyl.
It's like they're
you know,
running on.
Yep, but basically what they're getting from the blood test is a cocaine metabolite exchange. That's what they're finding, a lot of it, and it's but fentanyl is embedded therein and all of that. So, but yes, our roadways are another sort of piece, and we did have almost 60 roadway deaths last year.
Wow.
Due to alcohol and drugs or just period?
It's we have the breakdown by type from AOT.
Yeah, we actually just heard this.
Yes, of course,
presentation this
Senator
morning.
White
So
knows
we-
it better than
Yeah,
me.
I can forward over the presentation.
There's a
but-
weekly
Yeah,
email
they're
from AOT.
very detailed.
It's
And
very-
the difference between like Delta 9,
Yes.
THC, other drugs, combo with Delta 9, THC, certain ABV above or below, 0.6, 0.8. Like it's really
Drugs
break
might
it
be
out.
dealing
But
with-
we've seen
Some are pure speeding or pure neg.
I was gonna say
stuff too.
60 deaths for 60 deaths total,
Total.
not 60 related to alcohol and drugs.
Right.
No, there was like 11.
In that mix.
Okay.
In that mix, there was, and I think last year the breakdown was, in the year prior, it was like 23 were mixed. And 9 were alcohol. And this past year, it was something more like 30 were mixed. And you'll.
Yeah, we have impaired fatal crashes from last year. You're very good at your numbers. Impaired fatal crashes were 30, but total fatal crashes were 53. So as you can, and this is fatal crashes. This is an area. So that makes me believe there's 23
That were
Yeah.
not related to
Yeah.
substance.
and then 37 total impaired fatal crashes this year for a total of 58 total fatal crashes for 2025.
Yep. Thank
So yeah, slight increase, but like overall increase in general.
Yeah.
So
So you'd love to know what this person was on yesterday or the day before when they were going the wrong way up the interstate.
yeah.
And
And it takes about, they have some incredibly long period of time between
By
when,
your system.
between when you can actually,
But also remember, there are some things that you can take that may impair you that are actually out of your system so quickly that you only that you wouldn't, that by the time you went through the process of getting a warrant, like there are certain things that can impair you that the half-life is 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, and we do have some DUI changes as we kind of have a miscellaneous DUI bill every year that are 2 TSRPs, traffic safety resource prosecutors, 2 of our federal funded positions in our department. We only have 2 prosecutors funded with federal dollars, and we have 3 other individuals who are investigators for domestic violence. So we have a total of 5 impacted federal positions in our department. I should have mentioned that because I know it's an area
And
that
is that going away? Are those programs
right now,
going?
please everyone knock on wood, but all of the funding for that seems to be okay right now. Yeah. Yeah, and it's, it's about prosecution. And so that hasn't been an area that, it's been an area where we're working hard. It's a public safety nexus. So we're actively involved in cases there, and we hope that that continues, across the country, but obviously in Vermont too.
Well, because of the change that we're seeing in impaired drivers, that we're seeing either that mix of alcohol and drug or just drug only, our TSRPs suggested, I believe it's 5 various changes to our DUI law, but essentially just to keep up, to make sure that our laws are keeping up with what law enforcement and prosecutors need to be able to collect the evidence and bring these cases to court and to try them and to prosecute them. And so that is a whole separate document. Happy to share it. It's about 10 pages long. It's very technical. It's very interesting. And Senator Wachowski, you'll definitely be reading it.
White, transportation.
Yes, so happy to share it with everyone if you would like. That is one of our 10 priorities is that DUI update. Our TSRPs had done something similar last year, and it was very helpful. So they're really picking through our statutes and just improving them.
Or TRSPs.
Traffic Safety Resource Prosecutor. That's the federal position. So we have two who can just focus on driving, DUIs, but driving that lead to fatalities is where most of their focus is, would you say, yes.
Yeah.
But they're just general knowledge is helpful to the entire department.
They have a dual mission of training and prosecution. So they prosecuted a case today and recently resolved a major case in Rutland County where a woman was killed in 2022.
Yes,
so-
we're all
So
aware.
that's the type of case that they work on, type of cases.
And
Yes, any questions?
any progress on the ability to better test if drug related DUIs are occurring? Is there are doing any better testing for drug intoxication on the road versus, I mean, because that's what we
And-
missing.
You know, our one of our TSRPs, Dennis Wigmans, former state attorney from Addison, could come in and spend a good long time with you all about that area of practice. What we have seen is DREs, so drug recognition experts. Vermont has the highest number of DRE examinations in the country, more than California, I might add.
So we really
we have a
rely
lot
on
of
them
those.
to determine.
Because
But
it's
they also have to get to the scene.
Correct.
Getting to the scene takes time.
correct.
And to go to Tanya's point.
Yeah.
Maybe out of their system by then.
It's not a lot of drugs with that short of a half-life. It do exist. The DREs, if they were to do a roadside stop and determine that they thought someone was intoxicated, is there a confirmatory blood test?
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
very subjective.
Yeah, there's the training, which is a national training, which we help do the training here in Vermont. But then there's a national academy that they go to as well. But then there is, if there's blood drawn, then you have to match up both. And to really have a successful prosecution. Now, there is other types of cases where if someone makes an admission or that sort of thing as well, it'd be less reliant on a blood test, or a blood warrant. But yes, yeah.
Yes, but the officer needs a baseline of evidence to ask for a warrant. And that's actually one of the fixes is that currently it's only to draw for blood, and really we can test with blood or saliva. And so adding the or saliva is an important add. That's one of the adds this year. There's also been an interesting study to look at how long detentions are for these roadside stops and how long it takes from being pulled over to if you need to do the blood draw, if you get back to the station, the length of time and whether or not that can be shortened. But what's interesting, what came out of that was whether Vermont wants to explore the ability for officers to be able to draw blood, which some states allow, so that you don't have to go to the hospital. So that's another thing that's, in the suggestions of do we want to explore that? So those two things, collecting the evidence earlier and shortening the detention time. So there's a few really interesting things.
And then also not taking up a hospital environment that is also inundated with other activity with a blood warrant.
Oh, yeah. No, I think getting officers to be able to do that would be great.
It's interesting, and there, a variety of opinions on it. But some states do that, and of course, you're trained.
Well, officers aren't supposed to be squeamish. They're supposed to be.
There's a reason that. Please,
I'm just curious if, so I recall, and this was before I was in the building, but as we were having the cannabis conversation, there was a lot of conversation about the science not being adequate behind saliva testing. Has that changed? Has that come along? But I clearly remember that was not put in place because the science was inadequate.
I don't know specifically for cannabis, but I believe for other drugs, there's been some level of being able to depend on it. And I would absolutely want to get Dennis or somebody from the forensic lab to come in to speak to that. But it is something that is relied on.
Cold call.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I just have to say, this is kind of incredible, just how similar the conversations this committee is asking to what we had in Senate Transportation, because Senator Pat Brennan, one of his key, we talked a lot about the saliva test this morning, essentially, and it seems to not be used to actually determine if it is at least for AOT's reporting, they only use blood tests.
Because we don't allow them to use saliva tests because the science was not.
Exactly. So
What they're asking for is to be able to use the saliva
you
test.
are asking to do that.
To be able to have the option of either test. Now, again, I do not, I want Attorney Wigmans and or the lab to come in, but that they were presenting that this was a
And part of it
viable
is,
piece, so I don't know.
yeah, not just about the cannabis conversation, but on the full spectrum. And, you know, the other thing is because we do still have combined, and there's still both the cultural and public perception that a lot of bad driving is due to just alcohol. And so just ensuring that there's options for whatever that looks like, is I think the piece, but you're right. The lab could come in and there's a wonderful person that comes to our annual training who's incredibly engaging and is one of my favorite trainings is going to, I forget. Yeah. So you should get him in here from the lab. He's incredibly engaging and talks about where things have evolved even in the last 5 years. But I think on the cannabis piece, we want to get some real experts in here. We should get,
wanna get
Mr.
more.
Pepper in here to talk to you
Oh.
about that. Yeah.
I'm not sure, no, Senator White, you're right.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't allow it.
Okay.
Be-
But we basically said earlier in transportation that the reason was because they were more clear, at least for their reporting, because they have to report to the federal government
Yeah.
as well. So it seemed like for the crash data piece, but you're not requesting it for crash data, you're requesting it for your own. So that might be one discrepancy.
Another
to
piece
think
of
about
evidence,
if you really do.
And maybe it's, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we can get the right people in here to really drill down on that.
Yeah, that is definitely a few steps out from where I'm comfortable talking. Another priority, we have, and that you will more than likely hear in a few different rooms, is to discuss the ability for Vermont to have a forensic facility. For us to look at competency
No.
restoration. And at last count, there are 4 bills right now that have been introduced this year that speak to this in different ways, and also speak to crime victim notification when a crime victim is involved in a case where the defendant is found either incompetent or insane and is in the care of Department of Mental Health, what notifications the crime victim should have or does have. And then that's another separate bill. This is something our department feels very strongly about. And we're looking forward to the conversations on it. We know that we've heard that on January 21st, there will be a presentation of victims who have been involved in these types of cases, where again, the defendant has either been found incompetent or insane, and it's not being securely held for a variety of reasons. But they're going to talk about their experience. And that's on the 21st. I believe Lieutenant Governor is hosting that meeting, and we would encourage everyone to attend. Other than that, so we have a few other victim-centered pieces of legislation that we would like folks to look at. One is midpoint review, which we won't file this committee down too far on that, but it's that for folks put on probation, that if they've done all of their criteria, the Department of Corrections automatically will ask for them to be released from probation at their midpoint of their probation sentence. We have a number of issues with that, but at the very least, we have a number of offenses that we think should be not included exactly, particularly a violation of abuse prevention order. Because somebody who's been found guilty of that offense should not have the benefit of the midpoint review. And so there's been a lot of conversation around the victim notification system. There was a task force that Tim was intimately involved in. They had incredibly robust meetings between the Department of Corrections and the
Center for Crime Victim Services. Yeah.
Crime Victim Services. I apologize, gentlemen. And that'll be presented to the judiciary committees, the work that committee did around improving our automatic notifications to victims, but just our communication with victims in general. And that'd be a big piece of keeping an eye.
I'm just gonna give a quick shout out to Kim as well, who organized an MOU for the first time between our department, Department of Corrections, Center for Crime Victim Services, and other entities, where we put down on paper rather than scattered across statute, who is responsible for which parts of the victims' rights statutes, and our agreement to work together rather than being siloed, with respect to putting those rights into play. And it's been a great conversation. We've had a number of meetings separate from the task force on getting that MOU done. And it's in draft form right now, but we will absolutely send that to you because it's actually a helpful document for your constituents to have. And we will post on our website. It will be a part of the trainings that we do. But it also puts into the MOU which statutes direct which departments, because if you're a victim of crime, you do not care who is doing it. You just want to know and have the information. And to them, particularly at the victim of crime for the first time, state government, they just want to know when the next hearing is, when the person is going to be on the parole board schedule, when the probation is coming up, when their midpoint's coming up. And it's very confusing even for practitioners. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done collaborating on that. There has been some strife in the process the last few years, but I think the conflict have created some pretty good outcomes with better working relationships. So we'll send that to you when it's completed as well, which I think it's in the process.
Yes, very much in draft form right now. And I will celebrate when it's finalized, and then I will happily take any credit until it's finalized. No credit needed. You quickly blast through a few items and happy to answer any questions. But already in this first week, a few things have been taken up by House Judiciary. So within our priorities. So that's exciting. I just walked down from a conversation about the definition of recidivism, which connects with just data collection across our state. We do not have the best system for collecting data and analyzing data. And we know this has been a conversation going on for years, but one point that we advocated for last year is let's start fixing some definitions because that'll help our data collection.
Yes, Senator Clarkson.
So there's progress being made on data collection and a data trust, a data trust bank within ADC. We called for it when we did our special oversight committee on workforce development, and it was one of the models we looked at was creating a data trust, and they're making inroads on it. And Josiah, it's on our website on our agenda on the Senate Economic Development, but I think his name and Drake. Drake at the Office of Workforce Strategy and Development is working on this with Josiah. And Josiah's last name, I think, is Raisch, R-A-I-S-C-H. Maybe he's in charge of this, the beginnings of this data trust. And all what we're trying to do is break down silos of data so that we can all access or have the appropriate authority who could access the data that is collected nationally and all over state government so that we can have it all in one place and access it. It's well protected. And Josiah is your man. The last name, not sure.
Oh, we'll find it.
We have it. Although
Thank you.
we could pull it up. I think it's Rich. Emery might be willing to pull it up from our agenda today. But he'd be a person for you to be in touch with about that so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel on it. Because we're already moving in that direction.
And there's I don't know whether it's connected with that, but we have been working with Laura Carter and well, I forget her name from the Record Center. But there's
From our
from Archives, and they're doing a survey of all the departments to understand all the records and data that folks have.
so
And
they
I think
should
somehow
put
that
on your
might be
notes.
connected.
Yeah.
But if
You
not,
can
make sure.
Archives.
McKenna. Tanya Marshall.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a
Is it
few.
Raisch?
R-A-I-C-H-E.
R-A-I-C-H-E, Josiah Raisch. Hi, I got it. It was close. Now, yeah. Anyway, he's terrific. and a font of information and very clear on what this project's about. That's exactly what we're trying to do. It's finally, it's just so frustrating that if we're trying to measure everything that we do and go to Brian's good work on government accountability, we are very much wanting to measure our work and collect the data.
And exactly, and if we're gonna measure, we need
Data.
we need the data and we
We
need
need a
common
common
definitions. We need to agree
Yeah.
on what those definitions are. And currently the definition of recidivism just simply doesn't match how we actually use the term. Again, yes, the current definition in statute, and it's actually under the Department of Corrections statute, is that someone who's been incarcerated for a year. So that's the
Oh, you have to
baseline.
have served for a
You
year.
have to have served for a year and then commit an offense after release. So it doesn't
Oh.
capture anyone who has less than a year of incarceration.
Which is
So anyone who has
Hmm.
a probationary sentence is not counted in that
Right.
data. And so it's really about who's being reincarcerated. Again, you still need a minimum of a year sentence before you're even being counted. And so that's just not when.
It's a very lengthy sentence in Vermont.
Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
just not-
repeat offender may be a better term.
Well, but
Well,
even.
and again, our repeat offenders often are not getting a minimum year of incarceration. So
This is S96. This is S96, right? This is the bill that you want us to look at.
there are two. S96 is on the Senate side, and then H410, which is just being discussed in the House.
Okay, so we don't need to worry about it until it.
Well, also probably gonna go to judiciary, not GovOps. We're pretty far afield of the GovOps agenda.
Exactly. And so, and then again, I don't want to pour into too many details outside, but this is what we're looking at and interested in. The last one I'll just mention, and then again, any questions you might have. There is a bill in the House for hearsay exception expansion, raising the age from 12 and under to under 16 for children who have been putative victims for certain crimes, that abuse of a child, sexual abuse or serious bodily injury, that there's hearsay exceptions that are allowed right now for children 12 and under, and this would allow children 13, 14, and 15 to have those same exceptions. And we were just talking about that in House Judiciary this morning. So we're delighted that a number of our priorities are already being discussed. And we're looking forward to working with you all in whatever way it might cross in this room.
And I might, just the 10th one for the record, circling back to GovOps, real jurisdiction, in my opinion, is reducing the pressure on our courts in general. The accountability docket, as she said, call it whatever you want, but it's about ensuring that people have speedier and quicker access to justice, defendants, victims, the public, and practitioners. And I think if we do that, we'll be doing a better job with taxpayer money and with our government buildings. And when people often, why do you keep talking about space and time with this? It's really the most important thing. We have 14 criminal spaces. We have 22,000 cases. The math is incredibly difficult. And so if we can solve for that and move cases in a way that actually produces outcomes where we're not having to worry about recidivism as much, that's great too. So, it's when I think about what you all do in here, you're thinking about sometimes those big, what is the government doing to have our taxpayer money go the distance? And it isn't just about sentencing. It isn't just about, it's about how do people, and this is something that I want to do in Chittenden. How does the community feel things are going right now? And has it improved? Has the outcomes improved? But it's big picture, our court system.
Yes,
So we would then need to be reviewing the data and the success of all the programs that have diverted people from your court
Yes.
system. So I would think to that end, we would also need to be looking at all the data on the diversion programs, on the, on the social justice, the
Community justice
community
centers.
justice centers. All of that is also a piece of reducing the pressure on your
And
office.
to the numbers, 22% of all misdemeanors go to diversion.
Yeah.
It's between 20 and 22, very consistent in the last 5
Yeah.
years. And so we know that
And
one
are
out of every four.
successful, right?
Well, here's the thing.
That's
about that.
what we also.
Here, I will say this with respect to data. If you're successful, and so
Oh, that's
you,
not-
if you're successful, that's great for the person involved. If they come back into the system, even though Prosecutor Byhowski knows the person's name, you must pretend that as if you don't. And so that's a struggle as a practitioner and as a court system. It's that deal though, right? Of like diversion. If you do diversion, you're gonna get your case. But in terms of success long term, it's
Yeah.
harder to measure
That doesn't
that.
help us on measuring our success.
It's a data gap. It's a data gap that
No, we can improve it.
right. So I just wanted to say with diversion, there's a pro and a con. Yeah.
Well, want to be clear that part of completing diversion is that you don't get in trouble again for 2 years. So it's not like it just immediately disappears because you went
Yes.
to counsel
Yeah.
once. But I also am wondering in terms of the sort of, I know you said we're not calling it accountability court. What are we calling it instead?
Oh, well, there's been a number of comments, and so I just wanted to note that there might be sort of a rebrand.
Okay,
moving
so
forward.
right now that is
Right
still what it's
now,
being
folks are
called.
still calling it accountability docket, not accountability court, but the accountability docket.
We're gonna call it regular court in the future though.
That would be great.
I think all court is accountable.
But
Same.
I guess my question, seeing how well that's working in Chittenden County is one of the asks that, I mean, currently we have a criminal division and a civil division. Do we need a short, like, what is the ask here in terms of this is working in Chittenden County? Cool. What are you asking us for?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we need dedicated time and it's not gonna be the same in each county. In Chittenden, we know we need in Chittenden. We need the 3B courtroom or something like it on the third floor to be available for flexible scheduling. That is much quicker than 30, 60 and 90 days. In Windsor County, it might be that you only need that courtroom 3 days a month or 1 day a week. It's a different volume and a different environment. And it also depends, when can the AHS umbrella or other service organization umbrella be available in that program? So for me, it's not just on the court time, but it's on the access to services in each community. But for each county, we know each county could benefit from dedicated space where our violent offenses are not finding their way into the courtroom, because those are what kick out the misdemeanors and the repeat votes.
So
Dedicated.
court space that is dedicated to
Yes.
nonviolent
Correct.
offenses.
I'll say misdemeanor court, although there are some felonies which are nonviolent, which are in accountability docket right now. For
So
example,
that's what the accountability.
If I broke that window.
Correct.
That would be,
that is correct. Yes,
because that's an expensive piece of glass.
that's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And is there something coming from the State House that can help make that happen?
One thing we've done is we're trying to survey underutilized court spaces. Think about GovOps for a second, underutilized court spaces to have that time. Something that only the judiciary can speak to is the court staff that would be required to use those spaces. And whether or not they need retired judges to come back once a month for something on a rotating basis. Right now, we have a single treatment court judge, Judge Griffin, who I had the privilege of practicing in front of, who is traveling around the state.
Kevin is the only.
He's the only treatment court judge, and he travels around the state. His honor travels around the state. I won't call by his first name in here.
That's actually an improvement because we used to
Yes.
drag other judges out of their court docket to play treatment court judge, and then we established a.
There's some pros and cons to it, but what I would say is that an accountability type of SWAT approach. Okay, we're seeing an uptick in Windham County. We need to dedicate some more time there. Having a team be able to do that might be something to think about.
But given the percent of our cases that involve mental health, it's shocking to me.
I'm telling you, this is an improvement over what we used to do.
It may be. Jeffrey Crawford.
Maybe we
I
need
think,
2
did
or
the first
3 or
mental health.
2 or 14 of us.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tim and Kim.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you for
Chair.
having us.
Well, there should be an ask right there.
Great, right.
Second, mental health, traveling, judge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think we need more.
Yeah,
You're back
we're
over there.
your advocates. If you don't ask, you don't get.
And we need one in the kingdom.
Okay.
We do.
Just the treasurer. Okay.
John is all over.
Good.
Got it.
Good to see you. The treasury is all yours, Mr. Chair.
The question is, how is
How is Mike Pichek managing without Ashland?
Yeah, I'm gonna depart. That's what we were just catching up on.
My God, I don't know how you're managing without Ashland.
Yeah, well,
Welcome in.
yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm here with Deputy Treasurer David Shear and Peter Trombley, who's actually going to be filling Ashland's shoes. So, you know, that will be.
Yes, your feet.
What is that?
Feet. Oh, it's a small feet.
Still on live, so.
Anyway, I don't care. We know, but she wasn't your deputy.
No, Director of Policy.
Right.
So that is that position, it'll be reclassified a bit, but that'll be, those responsibilities Peter will be responsible for here in the legislature. But David will also be in the legislature and running point on our legislative work as well. So both of them.
It'll be lovely to see more.
Excited to be here.
So before we start, we have one new face at the table and let him introduce himself and we can proceed.
I had the honor already of meeting.
Oh, okay.
her in Orleans District Senate.
Yeah, well, welcome to Senate DevOps.
Yeah,
Congratulations on being here.
thank.
They have the city and village manager in our midst.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, it's great for a lot of issues that you work on.
And in addition to Peter, who's your other son?
This is our new committee assistant as well. Hillary Matthias.
And this gentleman is now, Levon works for Bridget Morris and her team. Yeah.
God,
Maybe same
on your entourage.
Yeah.
Too close to be indistinguishable. But
Yeah, I definitely will run you over.
That's-
You're welcome to scoot your chair over if you don't want that.
Yeah, well, I wanted to run through a preview of our omnibus bill that I know will, I think, start in the House, is my understanding, and we have a full committee hearing on that tomorrow, but wanted to give a preview to the Senate Gov Ops Committee, and we have sort of a section by section review that we provided to you, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
When we get those, would you be kind enough to print them out, at least for me, because I don't have them. Oh, I do now. Anticipate, because we just went through what we didn't have it, so now we have it.
That is my mistake. I just sent it to Emery.
Thank you all as well. Thank you.
I think we're ready.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
So it's a section by section sort of summary of the proposal. That I'd run through and give an overview of the items that are in it. Again, feel free to stop and ask any questions, but sections 1 through 5 largely deal with our unclaimed property division. Our unclaimed property division is responsible for returning money that's been lost or forgotten that comes to the state of Vermont, back to Vermonters. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but we've had a really big uptick in the amount of money that's coming into Vermont. We've had a really big uptick in the amount of claims we're paying and the amount of money that we're returning as well. So it's a good thing. We're getting more money back to people, but they are processing way more claims than they've ever processed before. It's putting a little bit of pressure on them. The unclaimed property division is funded by monies that they collect by the unclaimed property proceeds. So there's not a general fund amount of money that pays for that division. And then sections 6 through 23 are largely related to retirement division. Similarly with retirement, they are self-funded as well. They get paid by the proceeds of the pension funds and OPEB funds that we manage. And then section 24 relates to 2 positions, or actually 3 positions, a position for retirement and then 2 positions for unclaimed property that we wanted to talk about. But starting at section 1 with the unclaimed property items, the first one is focused on monies that we get back from medical insurance companies. Oftentimes, let's call it a Cigna will send us a really large, like $25,000 claim for, let's call it UVM Medical Center. And that's all the information that we have. So as far as we know, this is a $25,000 payment that needs to go to UVM Medical Center for something that they need to be reimbursed for. But as we've been finding, more likely than not, oftentimes that 25,000 probably represents a reimbursement that should be going to patients instead of to the hospital. But we don't have the capacity, we don't have the information from them. They're not turning any information over to us to get that money back to the rightful owner. So this would be a requirement that medical insurance companies and their payments that come into us have an EOB, an explanation of benefits, a number, so that we can track, okay, this is for a patient, not for the hospital. And we can track which patient it is and then put that on our website so that they get their money back directly. So we get it to the right person.
Senator White.
did you have it reviewed if that's like a HIPAA violation by any chance? Like if someone does the EOB, would you be able to delineate what the procedure was? And is that at all information that would be confidential?
So because it's just like the number, it's not sort of the whole explanation of benefits about
Okay.
sort of the coverage and the procedures and whatnot. It's.
Yeah, what is an EOB number then? Is it just
It's like
the,
a patient ID number, basically.
oh, okay.
So-
So it's not like procedure,
Right.
Okay.
But we wouldn't add a new data point for our website. It would be information that we would use to identify who the person is. And so I wouldn't have concern about that. And it's insurance company sending that to us, and then we're not going to be providing that publicly. So wouldn't be worried about it. Data privacy issue. Yeah.
So anything else?
Two things.
Yeah.
I still make sure it's HIPAA compliant. It sounds like it will be, but just because it's not public doesn't mean it's not
Yeah.
a HIPAA violation. But my question is, does that mean currently the medical center is getting money that they shouldn't be, that should actually be going to patients?
Yeah, we can't prove that one way or the other because we don't have the information. But when we look at these claims that come in for, hospitals or medical facilities, oftentimes you would think that you're trying to understand a scenario where the insurance company would be reimbursing the hospital. It make more sense that probably is something that's for a consumer. So that's why with this change, we'll know for certain, but that's an assumption.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if that is what we find out has been happening, what then? Would that be an issue for the auditor to deal with?
Well,
To claw back the money that has gone to the hospital that should have gone to patients?
because what we get from the holder, people that turn the money over to us, like they're required to provide certain information to us. And if they provide that information, all we can do is put it up on the website. So we would have to go back and get that information from the past from them, which may or may not be something that we could do. Not that we couldn't do it, but have the legal authority to do it. We don't even have the legal authority to require them to provide it to us in real time. So that's really the challenge that we're dealing with. They don't have to turn it over to us. They wouldn't turn it over to us unless we have the legal authority to request it and require it.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess my concern is I'm not opposed to this. I just want to make sure it's
Yeah.
done in a way that's HIPAA compliant. But I guess my concern is if we do this and then we see over the course of the next year that actually lots of those payments should have gone to patients. That means historically,
Yeah.
lots of those patients should have gone to patients. And how do we
Yeah.
put that money back in their pocket?
I would say if we pass this and then we see in a year that in fact our theory is correct, then it's something we'd be happy with about a plan for addressing some of that remediation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Senator White?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get too deep into this, just so I understand, this is a bill that has not been introduced yet?
I think that's,
Or what's your,
Has been introduced on the House side, and Senator Collmore, you have the text as well, I believe.
Oh, Pat, I mean, it would be a committee bill then, I guess.
Well, I think we might wait for it to come across.
oh, okay. So this is as drafted.
Sounds like.
There's a House bill. We'll find out about that, but this is not an ask for us to take this up as one of our committee priorities for a committee bill then.
No,
This
it
is
sounds
just,
like it's coming to us.
okay, thank you.
yeah. Is that right? That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine with me.
So, section 2 and 3 does deal with unclaimed property, but it also works with our Vermont Saves program. So you remember Vermont Saves is something that we passed a couple of years ago. It's
Good money.
up and running. It's been up for a year, just about, now that we've passed into the new year. And it's gone really well in the early days. This is a program that is a publicly administered retirement program that we run out of our office. So if you're a small business or a nonprofit that does not provide retirement to your employees, you're required to sign up for Vermont Saves. There's no cost to you as a nonprofit or as a business. And then your employees are automatically opted into a Roth IRA. They can opt out of it, but if they don't take any action, they're in it. And then within 30 days, a payroll deduction will occur. And then after another 30 days, will be invested in a target date fund that aligns with their retirement date. So the reason we did it is because the data shows that if you don't have access to retirement through your workplace, you just don't save for retirement for the vast majority of people. So those folks are on a trajectory to have much less dignified retirement, to be really financially insecure in retirement. And Vermont Saves is looking to address that problem. So we have about 1,300 employers that are participating right now, 5,300 individual savers that are saving. And collectively, those 5,300 savers have put aside about $5 million in that first year. And all of the numbers really in that first year are growing and they're continuing to expand. So we think within 5 years, we'll have about 20,000 savers and then tens and tens of millions of dollars collectively saved as well. So once we get to that point, actually just one more data point about people saving. About 55% of those that are of the 5,300, they're under the age of 40, and about 30% are under the age of 30. So a lot of young people saving, which is really great. Time is on their side.
Senator Clark.
Perhaps we could enter into a discussion with the Vermont legislature, who provides no retirement benefits.
Maybe we can give us help.
That we,
Salary first.
I don't know, this is something we could do actually. I'm serious. I think the legislature actually should enter into a discussion about this with you because, as you know, we provide no benefit,
Yeah.
retirement benefits. And so I actually think this is something that some of our legislators might take advantage of through the legislature.
Yeah, and even though we have it set up for businesses and nonprofits, individuals.
We are nonprofit.
Well, an individual can also sign up for it on their own.
Yeah, so you could do it.
Yeah. But I understand your point. Well, I'll ask Becky, because we looked at that when we passed it and there was some reason the legislature was exempt.
That's because we're not actually technically employed, I
Yeah,
don't
that's
think.
probably right. Yeah.
But I mean, that we're individually elected and we're not, this isn't the point. Yeah, there's.
But now that it's up and running, it's an established program and it's working.
I think if
can
we
have
could
that
come up with a way
conversation,
to market it to legislators,
Yeah.
it's something for us to talk about.
No doubt. So all of that's going well. To run this program, we got a one-time appropriation 3 years ago,
Yeah.
about $750,000. So we have a director and then we have a communications and outreach person for the program. And at the end of this current fiscal year we're in, the one-time appropriation will run out. So in terms of the revenues we're collecting from Vermont Saves, I think this year it's going to be about $36,000, but it requires about $300,000 to run it. Now, you know, what's going to happen over these next 5 years as the accounts grow and the assets under management grow is that the fees that we're collecting are going to continue to rise and rise and rise. And we expect sometime in the next 5 to 6 years will be 100% fully sustainable and then off and running. And that gap of how much we need is going to close every year because the revenues are going to rise every year. So when we were thinking about how can we present a suggestion for funding Vermont Stage between here and what is fully sustainable and not having impact on the general fund, we turned to something else that we do in our office, which is a transfer from our unclaimed property fund into the Vermont Higher Education Trust Fund.
Right.
So it's about $200,000, give or take, a year that goes into that trust fund from unclaimed property. Our suggestion is that we divert it temporarily to the Vermont Saves program. We put a cap on how much we can get. So as we don't need that money in the future, it'll actually go on to the Higher Education Trust Fund. And the reason we suggest the Higher Education Trust Fund is because it just had a really significant windfall from the estate tax revenue of about $26 million of one-time deposit. So it basically doubled the size of the trust fund from about $30 million to $60 million.
Wow.
So this is a relatively small amount that gets deposited into that trust fund, but it would have a really significant impact in keeping this program, you know, operating until it gets to the point of sustainability.
Would you pay it back?
The plan is not to pay it back, but, you know, we are suggesting that we raise the threshold of the monies that go from unclaimed property from 110 years old to 150 to 10 years old. So in time, the Higher Education Trust Fund would end up getting more money than it would make up for it.
There you go. On the other hand, it doesn't sound like we're gonna need it.
Well, that's a whole other question.
Oh, right.
Yeah, yay windfall. That's not a word we hear very often.
No, and it would put the estate tax, right? Which, you know, so they make an estimate about how much estate tax we're going to collect, and then the amounts that are over that windfalls into this Higher Education Trust Fund. And I think, you know, there's been speculation about whether the estate tax will continue to have larger years because of the demographics of Vermont. And
Given the number of old people that are about to start dying.
yeah, yeah.
Say that we're gonna do better and better.
That's exactly.
The trust demographic.
So moving on just to section 4 and sections 5, they both deal with claims that we file for Vermonters and a process that we do called an accelerated review. So right now, claims are under $250 for our unclaimed property office. We can make a reasonable determination about who the owner is and then send them the money without getting a lot of documentation, without getting a notarization. about getting original documents and that sort of thing. It's just a way of getting us people's money more quickly because these claims are low risk and we have a high degree of confidence that we're sending it to the right person. We'd like to move that threshold from $250 to $1,000 to help us basically just get money back to people that we have, again, reasonably determined it's their money. It's less bureaucratic, it's more efficient, it's easier for our staff because we don't have to go through all of the mechanics and all of the bureaucracy and all the operations of getting all those original documents when we know with great certainty that it's the right person. And again, the risk for the claim is relatively low because we're still dealing with a relatively small amount of money with $1,000. So that's the recommendation for section 4. And there's a similar recommendation in section 5 when it pertains to estates. So right now, if we require any estate that is larger, or claim in an estate that's larger than $5,000 to have an estate open, to be able to pay that claim. So if it's in the estate of John Doe, we require the family to open up the estate so that they can get their $10,000 property amount. We want to raise that threshold from 5,000 to 10,000, again, to reduce the bureaucracy, reduce the cost of families that have, all the relatively smaller estate claims that are in our office. So it's really a consumer focused, policy to make it a little bit less burdensome to get people's money. And then similarly with this other part in section 5, it's the same concept, only here, this is payments that go to joint property owners. So this would be like if you had a brother and a sister, it's just making that threshold go from 250 to 1,000 as well. If we have reasonable determination that we found the right people and we're going to return that property to them. That's sort of everything on the unclaimed property side. On the retirement side, it starts in section 6. The first one is giving us authority at the treasurer's office under the state retirement system to levy penalties for late or inaccurate employer payments. So giving us the authority in this case would align with the teachers and the municipal systems. So the state of Vermont is obviously one of the major payers into the state system, but there are also some municipalities and sheriff's offices as well. And we have the authority when a school district doesn't give us the money that they're supposed to for the retirement and teachers' monies that they're supposed to contribute as an employer. We can levy an interest rate or a penalty if they're late or if the monies are inaccurate, they underpay. But when it comes to these municipalities and these sheriff's offices, we don't have that authority. So what ends up happening is the sheriff could not turn the money over to us. And then that money's not being invested in growing in the system for their employees. Their employees' benefit continues to accrue, but the overall system is being harmed because the money that's supposed to be in there at the right time is not in there and it's not having the same investment earning power. So it really would be aligning that authority with the other authorities that we have in the other systems. And we have had instances where this has happened in the not too recent past, and we've kind of been left without any remedies.
Senator Joshi.
I'm going to ask you this question, recognizing that I may have to re-ask it, I think tomorrow when we have a pension fund in. But that is why, under what circumstances and why would a sheriff or a municipality not be in the VEMR's system and instead be in the VSTRS system?
Yeah, so they're for the sheriffs, they're actually potentially in a couple of different systems. They now have the opportunity in Group G, which is the state system. Some of them have historically been in the state system as well. There's like an election that happened a number of years ago. And then there's, I think, 2 municipalities that are in the state system as well instead of VEMR's. So it's a very small subset, but I think it has to do with sort of historical choice and election that was made a long time ago. But Tim Duggan, who will be here tomorrow, can.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have a feeling that I might get a more complete answer tomorrow, but it was on my mind.
Yeah, nice.
Yes, Senator Lawrence.
So that's kind of interesting because back years ago, the state was underfunding the retirement system.
Right.
Yeah,
We
right.
didn't penalize them. So out of these groups, who's really driving the problem here? Is it the towns? Is it the sheriffs? Is it?
There's really a small number of towns. So the problem we've had has been with sheriff's offices.
That's what I was wondering. I was thinking that it's because they get sometimes underfunded too, and they're trying to do less. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Not the Orleans capture.
So section 7 is focused on the OPEB. So the OPEB is the other post-employment benefits. So you have your pension and then you have your healthcare, which is basically the OPEB, right? And when we did the pension reforms a number of years ago, we were focusing on the pension system, but a lot of the focus was on the OPEB because both were underfunded. The teachers and the state employees both have a pension system and they both have an OPEB fund. So there's basically 4 funds and each of them had over $1 billion of underfunding. About teachers was even more underfunded. But one of the things that was done was prepaying OPEB to get that in a much stronger position, and like $1 billion+ was taken off of the liability. Both the pension systems and the OPEBs, their funded ratios have continued to climb now for 5 years. So things are in a better spot for sure. But one of the things about being in a better spot and getting closer to the payoff date, which is 2038, which in my opinion is much more realistic for us to get there or to make significant progress to get there, because the amount that the pension is increasing every year, that contribution that we have to make, the ADEC, it's slowing down. It's not jumping up as dramatically. And it's actually expected to maybe the absolute number will not go down, but from an inflationary adjusted basis, it should be less impact on the budget over time as we get closer to 2038. So things can change, markets can change, but right now we're on a really good trajectory. But one of the issues is as you get closer to that 2038 timeline, there's more risk and volatility that you have a bad year, that it's going to have a significant budgetary impact. Because if you don't get the returns that you need to get, and you're only 5 years out from having to fully fund the system, it only has about 4 years to spread that new unfunded liability over. It doesn't have 20 years. It doesn't have 15 years. So everything gets a lot tighter the closer you get to the 2038 timeline, or for OPEB, the 2048 timeline is just a little bit further out before we fund OPEB. So our proposal here is to create a task force similar, but certainly much, much more narrow in scope to the pension reform task force that happened 4 or 5 years ago, to focus on this issue of basically how do we sufficiently and without risk land this plane as we get closer to 2038. And there are different approaches that you can take to what's called amortization. How do you deal with that unfunded liability? And I think there is a consensus that we can get to from all the stakeholders, but I think the vehicle for doing that is a task force and bringing everybody together and coming up with that consensus in a formal process. So that's our recommendation, to create that OPEB task force that will do that work and come back in 2027 with a recommendation. We are requesting $75,000 for actuarial and technical support for that task force, because we'll need to run some scenarios to make sure we're coming with the right, right proposal. Yes.
I'm a little curious how this is different than the required, I think it's 3 years.
The experience study.
Yes.
Yeah, so the experience study sort of looks, and the experience study is a good example, because we used to do it every 5 years, and there was more risk, right? That you're going to have some underlying assumption change, but you weren't going to reevaluate that underlying assumption until year 5. So it could have changed in year 1. And then you actually were underfunding year 2, 3, 4, and 5 until you fixed it in year 6. So by moving it to 3, we're sort of catching those things more quickly. And it's the same concept in terms of risk mitigation here. Only it's not about our assumptions we're making for health of the individuals, or longevity of individuals, or costs, or things like that. It's really about market conditions. Will something dramatically happen in the market, or will some really bad, assumption? Will we be off by some really bad assumption? Will it be a pandemic? Will it be something that happens that's very different than what we were expecting, that causes there to be a significant unfunded liability beyond what's being predicted? So it is about mitigating that sort of unexpected jump, because then it would just have this really large budgetary impact the next year. And our concern is, and I think the unions all share our concern, is if you get to a position where you have a really shockingly large budgetary impact, it very well could be a conversation that gets brought up again about, oh, we can't afford this. How do we amend it? How do we change it? How do we, reduce the benefit? And that's not where any of us want to be. So we view this as a sort of mitigating that, having this conversation and then eventually coming up with a proposal and implementing it is hopefully going to mitigate that risk, that sort of dramatic budgetary impact ever has. But what it means, Senator, is that in 2038, we may not be 100% fully funded. It might be 95% funded. It might be 92% funded. It might be 100% funded because everything might work exactly as we want it to work. But to take that, you know, to get over 90% funded would be great. The system would be in really strong position. So to get that, to sort of take away that like 100% funded, but to take away that risk is huge because it could mean in some of the scenarios that we ran, like hundreds of millions of dollars of additional budgetary need in a particular year as you're getting closer to 2038.
Guess, did this come before the pension oversight committee? Because I don't recall having this conversation with the joint pension oversight committee. And I feel like we could take a deeper dive into some of this in that space.
Yeah, I want to, you know, so Tim, you can ask Tim this question tomorrow as well, but I wasn't at the oversight committee hearing that was on in November, but I remember Tim was going to present this concept at that hearing, but maybe he did not.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing it because I'm on that
Yeah,
committee, which maybe I missed it. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to Tim more about it.
nice. Yeah, questions?
Yeah, I was just curious, because you guys have fixed a lot of things since last time I was here. So
We did, one pensions was one of them.
yeah,
We really
that's really,
worked hard.
really good. Because used to bug me on appropriations. So you form an actuarial every year. This is probably a discussion tomorrow dealing with Tim. And then what they were doing is they were overestimating their discount rate,
Right,
in my
right.
opinion, and then underestimating the expenses.
Right.
And it just kept every
Yeah.
year. So somehow, you folks, to your credit, figured out a plan and Jane Kitchell, I think, right? And got it going in the right
Yeah.
Jane and Jeanette,
One of
I
the
mean,
big,
this committee was really key. Jeanette and Jane were really.
Yeah.
fantastic. So
yeah, one of the big things, well, I mean, you have to get your assumptions into a reasonable place, right?
Yeah.
And the assumed rate of return is now at 7%, and we continue to think that's a reasonable place, but it was as high as I think 8.5% at one point, and 7.5. And so when you're missing your mark on that,
yeah.
you're sort of undercounting your unfunded liability is there. It's just that you're not accounting for it, and you have this opportunity for it to grow and grow and grow every year.
And what's really scary, it's not just this group, and it's happening across the United States, as far as I'm concerned. Some of the large cities are really struggling.
Yeah, the cities have some challenges. But if you look at the states, there's an analysis that Tim can mention tomorrow. But so many states have gone through pension reform in the last, let's call it 5 to 7 years. So it's good that Vermont, got on that track because a lot of them have started to move in the right direction, and now we're moving in the right
Of
direction.
course, if the economy tanks for a little while.
Well, yeah, when you look at the unfunded liability, like the biggest, most dramatic thing that happened in the last 30 years is the great financial crisis in 2007, 2008. That we went from basically 100% funded then to like really, at the lowest point, we first had 50%, right? So it took a long time to get back. So certainly the markets could impede our progress, but we do have reasonable assumptions. We are putting a lot more money into the system than we actuarially need to. Like we have $30 million, 15 in both systems that are going on top of the actuarially required amount. So it's trying to buy it
Yeah,
down.
you guys are doing great.
John. He served on appropriations.
Yeah.
We were in the house together.
Yeah, you guys have done it right.
Yeah. So we're feeling good about that, but
Yeah.
always not going. Sections 18 to 20 is focused on the OPEB that we talked about, but not the operation of it, not the administration of it, which our office will continue to handle, but on the investment part of it. So actually making the investments. Right now, our office is responsible for making those investments, even though there is the Vermont Pension Investment Commission that handles the investments for the pension. So they are managing the billions of dollars in the pension. I think this was left behind because they were trying to figure out, well, how would this separate fund be sort of implemented and brought in? But back then, when the pension reform happened, this fund only had about $60 million in it, these two funds for the OPEB, the teachers in the state. Now it's closer to 400 million because we're putting a lot of money in, we're pre-funding it. And that 400 million soon to be $1 billion, over the next number of years. So it's getting to the point where we would need to hire somebody to manage this money, like in our office. We couldn't just sort of do it with our resources that we have, which is how we've been handling it for date. So we recommend transferring the investment responsibility of this fund from our office over to VPIC so that they can manage these funds as well.
Senator Bielanski, and then.
I'm sort of circling back and just wondering how the current volatility of the healthcare market is
Yeah.
being considered in some of this thought on healthcare costs and the OPEB.
Yeah.
We're looking at like collapse of the healthcare system. So how do you factor that in?
Well, from an actuarial standpoint, they look at the trend and they look at the increases, and that's definitely factored in. I mean, where the pensions that I was talking about earlier and those ADEC increases, how they're small single digits this year, which we're happy about. The ADEC is going up significantly. It's a huge jump because the underlying cost of healthcare is going up for the OPEB side of it. And on the OPEB side, for teachers, our office was presented with a 50% rate increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield on July 1st. And we thought we had no other options. I mean, it was pretty late in the game, but we worked really hard to develop some other alternatives and eventually found one in HealthSpring that we were really happy about and was a much larger, more sustainable company. And their rate increase was more like 16 to 17%. So that meant even with the OPEB actuarial required amount going up by tens of millions of dollars, that reduced it by over $20 million. Would have went up by even more had we not done that. So it's great that we were able to find another partner. It's great that we were able to reduce those costs, but the underlying costs are still dramatic for healthcare, and it has a direct impact on the OPEB and on the budget of the state.
Senator White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this discussion really brings up for me my desire for us to divest our pension funds from fossil fuels.
Oh, it was one of our priorities and we'd love to continue.
And I'm just worried because it felt like in the past when we had these discussions with the treasurer's office about divestment, that then the argument we heard was that BPIC was unable to manage divestment because it was so analytically, fiscally, like it seemed like the expertise to do it was not there, and also the time that it would take wouldn't be there. So I'm very nervous to hear, based on them being unable to pursue divestment, which major institutions have been able to accomplish, that they would be prepared to take this on.
Yeah.
That's my first thing. And then it also makes me feel that we will never get divested of any sort if we make this transition. So I'm wondering if you can speak.
Yeah. Well, one thing on the how we invest the OPEB funds statutorily, there's sort of a direction that we do it so consistent with the VPIC portfolio. So all we're doing now is independently sort of trying to recreate the VPIC portfolio. So there are situations though where we don't, because we're a much smaller fund at a couple $100 million and there are billions. There are situations where we don't have access to certain investments that they do, and we have to sort of enter into those investments through the VPIC. So it's really sort of this meat and potatoes reason why we're suggesting the transfer. I think the bill was like S42, the investment bill last session.
2 sessions. We worked on it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we got it through and Mike worked
Yeah.
on it very closely. And Tom really did kind of,
He said he wasn't
I'm
going
kind
to
of
do it
guilty.
and we weren't going to do it.
Yeah.
So
but then we also found out that we have actually divested a significant amount
Right.
out of the portfolio. And that the amount that's left,
I think it was like 1 or 2%, right?
pretty modest, under 5%, I think it was. And then it just stalled. And we introduced it again last year. You did, or somebody,
Yeah, we-
all of us wanted to do this. And yeah, it's a good question.
but I guess my main question would be, do you see divestment as
Yeah.
do you see divestment happening at all with
Yeah.
this move?
I think, Senator, I don't think I think whether it happens or not, this won't, I don't think
Separate.
that will affect it, right? Because like when we were talking about the investment before, we're really talking about the pension funds, which really didn't
Those
have
are
any
not.
limits.
Okay.
But but if the pension funds are investing in these funds would likely need to follow the same kind of structure.
Okay.
So, I mean, we did work really hard to try to find a workable solution there, and I thought we did find one, but yeah.
Okay. Well, that helps me understand that.
Just on the same subject, if I could, before Tanya asked a question.
Mine's also on the same subject.
Oh,
Are the OPEB investments currently invested in fossil fuels? Because my concern would be if they're not, and they are moved to the BPIC, they will be.
Yes, because
Yeah.
our system has to, because we're sort of required to have a similar portfolio as VPIC, the place where it would likely be invested in fossil fuels is through index funds, just like where VPIC is largely having the fossil fuel investments. So those like large S&P 500 funds that are mutual funds that, you're not, you're not dictating, you're not dictating which, specific investment is in there. It'd be those indirect ways that it would be invested if they are. But I would suspect you would have a similar percentage as the VPIC fund, since it has to have a similar portfolio structure.
Yes, Senator Clark?
And to go to another major effort in your office, that Sue Minter is heading up, the Make Big Oil Pay. Big Oil, as we all know, is going to be very vulnerable in the next 10, 15 years in terms of paying for the damages that have been done to the world.
I mean, whether it's damages or whether.
And that exposes anybody who's.
Yeah. I mean, that was when we were working on this 3 years ago.
Yeah.
My position was broadly, when you look at the last 20 years of market returns for fossil fuel companies, and then you think about the next 20 years, the last 20 years are no doubt going to be better than the next 20 years. So how do you manage that risk?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have an additional investment concern. It may be that we need to have a larger conversation with the BPIC, and that is that in September of 2025, it looks like about $826,000 was invested in Israeli government bonds. And we actually have a policy on the books, the terrorism and genocide linked countries policy. And I'm a little concerned that the BPIC doesn't appear to be following that. And if we're moving more into that portfolio, that it just gives me concern. Would moving the OPEB funds there give us more or less oversight of how those are invested?
For the OPEB funds? Right now your oversight is through me and through our office for the OPEB funds. I do sit on the VPIC board, like I have a delegate that's on the board. So there's a board of commissioners, and then you have Tom, that's the chair, then you have Eric Henry, that's the chief investment officer. So that would be your sort of oversight there on the VPIC side. So it's different, it's similar, but it's just different, whether it's myself or it's Tom. It's just, those are the folks that are responsible to you. In terms of the Israeli bonds, I'm happy to look into it. It's the first time I'm hearing about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to send you the information that I have about it. I know that a couple of teachers, because it appears to be a teachers fund, have asked for that information and have not received it. And this is part of where the oversight comes in.
Right.
But that would be great if we could get some more answers about that, and I can send you.
Yeah, please do.
Yes.
We'll have Tom come in when we, if this can go over from the House, which I assume you think that procedure. I'll just remind folks too, not everybody on this committee was on board with that. I think that was said, and I just wanted to correct it. I'm a big believer in allowing the people that we charge with investing to invest, because if I'm not mistaken, one of the primary fiduciary responsibilities is to make money with the investment.
Yeah.
And I think Tom and his crew have done a great job.
The investment, because you think about how are the way. So when you're getting say your pension payment is, $1,000 when you're retired, right? How did you get that $1,000? You put money into the system over time, and then the system invested that money over time. And the breakdown is about like 35% of that $1,000 came from your own money or your employee's contribution. And then about 64% of it came from investment earnings over time. So for an average retiree, the investment earnings are critical to account for even more than half of what actually they've been paid out. Just to your point.
And I could remember a predecessor of yours, when she was treasurer, talked to the governor.
Oh, yeah,
at one
right.
point
Yeah, no doubt.
And said that we should not be getting ourselves involved in.
Well, her argument was that that it means we're at the table. But I mean, we're such a tiny amount at the table that it doesn't really matter. No one was going to listen to us. I would disagree. I really think it's very important that we not be investing things that are destroying our world. And there are plenty of other things that are making a lot of money right now that are doing, and it has for the last 20 years. It's just, I think you Anyway, it's a.
Well, we'll have Tom come in. I think he can certainly make a
Tom
case for it.
is stands on his
And
own.
again, when I was thinking about this issue, like when we were working on it 3 years ago in sense, like always try to bring it back to risk, right?
Yeah.
It's like, because the point that's being discussed about is it appropriate to legislate how do you invest, but it is appropriate to think about risk.
And the risk I had identified, which I identified again, is that I think oil companies are going to be under huge pressure and are going to be paying out billions to try and begin to fix what's almost unfixable at this point.
Okay, so unless there's other substantial,
Well, I'm just wondering who the right person would be, because I think a lot of times we have very siloed conversations, and I don't know who, maybe it's JFO. Because yes, we can look at what the pension fund is making from, say, fossil fuels, but then are we also looking at how much we're paying out? I mean, what's it been, $3 billion in the last 3 years due to climate related flooding? So like, I'd like someone who can sort of look at the bigger picture and cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
Maybe it's JFO, I don't know who it is.
I don't know either. They'd be certainly welcome to come in.
Well, Mr. Chair, we did have, Tom is the gentleman.
Tom DeLonge.
DeLonge, exactly. He came in, but he had also brought in a woman who was in charge of that portfolio and doing, because his other point was that they were doing some of this work
Right.
through their targeted investment work, trying to. So maybe we invite Katie back in at the very least.
Sure.
She might not be
She was pretty
impartial,
supportive. Yeah.
but she was definitely.
Yeah, I
in
just-
the-
Think we often miss looking at the whole picture. Like, sure, maybe we raised $200,000 on fossil fuels in the pension fund, but then we spent $3 billion cleaning up floods from climate disasters. Like, it seems like a net loss to me.
Okay, more to come.
You're saying they.
I guess.
So just, there's just 3 more sections I'll go through quickly. Section 22 and 21 and 22 rather, they authorize members of service the teachers union or the VEMR's municipal system, for the teacher system to purchase service credits, and time spent serving as president of an employee organization such as the NEA, while fully, being released from active employment. So this is, something that is similar for military or Peace Corps or other school service that occurs. These purchases that occur, are actuarially neutral, so they fully cover the cost, of service. It really just provides the NEA the opportunity to have folks that are younger serve as president. Because now, you really have to sort of, if you're leaving the system, you kind of already have to have your service credit to be really thinking that that's something that you can do from a financial standpoint. So it would put it sort of in line with some of these other opportunities where people are able to purchase that service credit for time that they've spent serving elsewhere. Yeah, we're happy to support it. NEA is really is looking forward to get the provisions. Okay. And it's actually really neutral, which is the key piece. Section 23, we did these changes last year, but somewhere in the proposal and somewhere to the passing, there were some technical language issues that didn't get fully incorporated. So this was relating to the CDAC, the Capital Debt Affordability Advisory Committee. So this is a committee that the treasurer chairs that makes a recommendation about how much bonding we should do every year.
That could be.
So we made some changes about what factors we should consider when making that recommendation. Here in the last couple of sentences, it talks about what's the remaining useful life of state infrastructure, meaning like how much bonding are we going to have to do in the future. So we don't have to do a lot of bonding. Maybe that's a reason to have a lower recommendation versus us knowing we have a lot coming up. Potential future capital maintenance and replacement costs, and other metrics used to recognize bond that are recognized by the bond rating agencies, including long-term liabilities not captured elsewhere. That really means pension liabilities. So even though we have debt that's outstanding as a state, and we think, well, that's really important and that's what the rating agencies care about, it's about $600 million in outstanding bonded debt, but we have still billions of dollars in unfunded pension liabilities, and that's other states. So, rating agencies are now starting to look at both of those, since the unfunded pension liability is actually a much larger component. So it's really kind of incorporating the reality of what's happening in the state with our infrastructure and the reality of what the rating agencies are looking at when they look at the state. So it's putting that language in that was, again, proposed last year and passed, but there's some cleanup language. And this is something that the Department of Finance and Management and the agency administration specifically requested that we put in, and we're happy to do it. So section 24 just talks about those two positions or two, positions in retirement and in unclaimed property that I mentioned. We're asking for 2 in unclaimed property. I mentioned that the number of claims has gone up quite dramatically. Here's the data on it. Fiscal year 23, we had about 18,000 claims for about $3.8 million back to Vermonters. And then in fiscal year 25, it's now closer to 32,000 claims. So 18,000 claims, 32,000 claims, totaling $9.45 million back to Vermonters. So during that same period of time, we also have gotten more money into the system. So we do make a general fund transfer every year when we do a calculation to determine how much we need to pay ourselves, how much we need to pay the claims, how much we need to have in reserve. And then the extra comes to the general fund. With these 2 positions, because the amount of money continues to grow, we don't see it as having any impact on that transfer. The amount that we are transferring continues to grow, and we expect it to grow, but it will continue to allow us to provide high customer service to Vermonters to get them their money back. It'll help us do a better job managing fraud risk, which has really grown a lot in the last 5 years. And it also has the potential for us to get more money back to Vermont as well, because with additional capacity, our office will be able to look at the businesses, the nonprofits, and the holders of money that are turning it over to us and be more intentional about getting that money back to us. So we're requesting these 2 positions. Again, no general fund impact, but really impactful in terms of the work that they'll do. And then a policy and research position in the retirement division. So 1 position in retirement. If you look at the data here, we're one of the leanest retirement divisions in the country, most efficient retirement divisions in the country. We have 2,860 members per staff person in Vermont.
That's amazing.
In the national median is about 1,364, and then a comparable size system, meaning a state that's of our similar size, about 1,200 members per staff person. So we're really are efficient, but there are times where our team gets sort of maxed and they have a hard time getting all of their work done, and also any sort of important project that might pop up. An example of that did work out was the Health Spring example I mentioned earlier. Our team had to work on overdrive unexpectedly to find an alternative that was
Healthcare.
for healthcare. Instead of the 50% rate increase, it was 60% increase. But it only happened because they did so much work developing that opportunity, doing the due diligence with them, doing the contractual work, getting the authority into our board, into our office to enter into the contract. So that really sort of ended up, maxing them out. And the systems do get more complicated. We have a lot of changes that have happened to our systems over the years. They're a complicated set of systems to run. We also manage the defined contribution plans and the deferred compensation plans, as well as the OPEB. So this, again, would be paid for by the retirement funds. It wouldn't have a general fund impact.
So we just increase the amount we keep for administration
Yeah.
with
Yes, every year
less
we,
going to
if they've earned, $1 million in investment returns, or whatever's in the system, 100,000 goes to, it's more, all these numbers are not right numbers, but 100,000 goes to us to pay for administrative expenses. Now it would be like $110,000. Yeah.
modest.
Yeah. Those aren't the actual numbers. I'm just kidding.
Michael, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you all for your time. And if you have any follow-up questions, I know we had some, we'll talk to Tim about some of the questions that happened today. And I know there's some follow-up questions for us that we'll look into.
Thanks.
Yeah,
And we'll see him tomorrow at 1:30.
yeah, exactly right. I'm looking forward to seeing you on crossover, hopefully, with the
Yes.
house.
Yeah, we'll have you back.
Yeah.
Well, and we have such a small, short amount of time to accomplish things in the legislature. And so it is funny that it was 3 years ago that we really had that battle with the third act on diverse development.
Yeah.
But you were very supportive for that run, and it was frustrating to have it derailed at the end.
Yeah, well,
But we almost got it there and didn't.
thought there were opportunities to find common ground among all different
Yeah, but
perspectives.
I've always been grateful to you for that. So thanks.
Well, thank you.
Okay,
And
Michael,
thank you
thanks.
for Sue.
Oh, yeah, no, Sue's doing a great job.
Committee, anything else today?
No,
Everybody's happy?
well, I'm not sure if we got it.
Happy.
I sent you a text about next week.
Okay, I'll get back. All right, sounds good.
And Peter,
Yes.
are we all fun?
No.
Peter, can you stay for 1
Yes.
second? I'll just.
Okay, I mean, until we adjourn, we're.
Yeah, no, I didn't see the red thing, but now
It's there. Okay, if there are no more issues for the committee today, we will.